Well, welcome to today's episode of HIPcast. We're going to be a little bit different today in that we are not necessarily going to talk about today's health information professional challenges because we are very honored to have special guest, former president of AHIMA, and really inspiration to many, Miss Diann Smith. And welcome to the show, Diann. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me and those very kind words.
Well, we really truly are honored. I'm going to read your bio for maybe some of the newer professionals who don't know who you are. Diann Smith is retired Vice President of Health Information Management Services and Clinical Documentation Integrity from Texas Health Resources, or THR, Hospital System in Arlington, Texas. Smith worked at THR for 23 years. During her tenure, she developed and implemented the consolidation of the HIMS and CDI across the enterprise into a top performing corporate structure. She formulated and advanced innovative strategies to provide operational services across the organization. Smith is a published author, an experienced leader in complex healthcare initiatives, and passionate about helping others attain their personal career goals. Smith has received notable national and state awards, including prestigious Distinguished Member National Award from the American Health Information Management Association, Distinguished Member Award from the Texas Health Information Management Association, and the Distinguished Alumni Award from Tarrant County College, the Outstanding Leadership Award from YWCA of Fort Worth and Tarrant County, Texas Health Harris Fort Worth President's Award, Leadership of Excellence Award, AHIMA Triumph Leadership, Mary Kay Inspiring Women, Mentor of the Year, presented by Women of Visionary Influence, and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Psi Theta Omega Chapter Woman of the Year Community Award. So for anyone listening who didn't know Diann, you see how just by reading some of her bio, and I'm not finished, how inspiring she has been to so many. Smith's leadership roles in various healthcare organizations have left a significant impact. She served 3 terms as a AHIMA Foundation Chair and as a 2018 President and Chair of the AHIMA Board. She's also served as the Chair of the AHIMA Professional Ethics Committee, Director of the AHIMA Board, President of Texas HIMA, and Commissioner on the Commission of Accreditation for Health Informatics and Information Management Education. Smith earned a Master of Science in Human Relations and Business from Amberton University and a Bachelor of Science in Health Information Management from Texas Women's University. She's a fellow in the American Health Information Management Association. She serves on the community boards across North Texas, including YMCA, Fort Worth Metro, the Arlington United Way Steering Committee, and the American Cancer Society Advisory Board of Tarrant County. She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And am I saying that county correct in Texas?
Tarrant County, yes.
Okay, very good, very good. Diann, again, welcome to this show. We are really, truly so happy to have you here, not only so that we can, get connected again to you and hear you, but also to inspire some folks, health information professionals that may not have ever been able to hear you speak before. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
So one of our questions that we love to ask for many of our folks that join us as guests is to tell us about your HI journey. We always laugh and say that typically folks aren't little kids saying, I'm going to go to work in a basement of a hospital, right? So how did you end up in health information? And then tell us about your career path that you took and all that you've done across your wonderful career.
Well, I will give you a snippet because it would take too long to go through everything. But actually, in high school, I worked. Grew up in the Waco, Texas area, And I loved books, loved to read, and wanted to be a librarian. You go, how do you get from librarian to HIM, right? Well, I worked at the local VA hospital in the patient library and had the opportunity to do some typing, probably call it keyboarding now, for the medical library because they did a lot of research papers and things like that. And that's how I was introduced to medical terms. And it was just fascinating. And so after high school, I went to the local college to get a degree in transcription of all things and discovered very quickly I did not like transcription. And had the opportunity to meet with some HI directors and moved to the Fort Worth area and got my associate's degree in HIT. And from there, I've just stayed in the field, loved the medical profession, knew I did not want to do patient care. Had an awesome first director who got me involved immediately as a volunteer for the local association. And what I will say to all of you listening out there, volunteerism has been part of my journey from the beginning. And it has been wonderful as far as my own professional development, meeting individuals, not just locally, statewide, and even on the national level. I think the volunteerism part of my journey has played the most significant role because it allowed me to learn from others. It allowed me to understand what was going on in the industry. And, that you bring back to your workplace, but it becomes a part of who you are and it becomes part of how you actually lead in organizations.
Yeah, that's something that I was very interested in at the very beginning. Having a mentor, a strong HIM director that said you need to get involved, you need to volunteer. And I think I'd been out of school maybe a year and ran for vice president of my local association, and and then the journey began and led us to all the crazy.
Yeah, Tennessee will suck you in early if you'll pay attention to us at all. We'll try to get you in there. I do want to make a follow up comment to something you said, Diann, and then maybe ask you a question that we didn't really prepare for, but I think you could probably speak to it pretty easily. So you said you learned typing, and now it's probably called keyboarding. I think we've graduated from keyboarding and we're actually into voice recognition or talk to text or artificial intelligence and robots, right? I don't think we don't really type anymore, I don't think. So, but along those lines, you started with typing and then started typing some medical terms, understood transcription was not for you. But my goodness, just in the time I've been in this profession, and I didn't come into the profession until a little bit later in life, the technology has changed so significantly. What would you say for the health information profession? What has been, besides electronic health records, because that's of course going to be the easiest answer, that'll be the easiest. But what do you think has been the most transformative besides electronic health records to the health information profession? What technology?
Well, Shannon, that is a great question because, during my career, I've seen a lot of changes. And what I will say, even when I first started, people talked about the electronic health record, but you really didn't see movement for decades, right? And I really wondered if it would happen during my lifetime, my workforce lifetime, right? So, but we were doing some things early on before we really started implementing electronic health records and things like scanning and the technology was starting to, I probably call machine learning, things like that, where it started improving our workforce skills that were needed. Things were changing. I think it probably the most significant change started in transcription. where you had voice recognition and you had transcription is still behind the scenes actually correcting the technology until it really learned. And so when you talk about EHR, the electronic health record, I think that's the biggest game changer. And now things are moving so fast because with the electronic health record came the evidence of needing data that was discrete, right? And so then you can take this technology and the information or the data and actually turn it into information. And so informatics from that perspective is huge. And everybody talks about AI. Well, machine learning has been around a long time, and AI is probably more advanced than the machine learning. But interesting, I saw 60 Minutes last night, and they were talking about artificial intelligence and how things are actually being trained, or the system is actually being trained, and it's individuals behind the scene that's actually doing that work to identify images and all of that. And so people are still involved. It's just now you need a different skill. And so, but taking that data and using it to drive change, determine, what influences are going on in the marketplace is critical. And it's just, it's mind blowing what the possibilities really are.
Feels like the amount of data is exponential from when I was in the basement of a hospital with a paper medical record, and you're bringing back some good memories with the transcriptionist with the foot pedals and still running tapes, and it's like, gosh, I didn't realize it's been that long since we were doing that, but that's been a long time. But it's like the data seems massive now of how much data has to be consumed and organized and put into play for decision support, clinical support, and that's just, it's almost a daunting task as I think about it sitting here.
Yeah, it's too daunting for human minds, right? I mean, we have to have machines to help with the amount, just with the vastness, as we spoke on a previous episode, that just the vastness of the data itself, right? It's just impossible for humans to keep up, and we certainly don't have enough health information professionals to do that, right? We don't have enough
Right.
credentialed folk to do that. So, Diann, I wanted to talk a little bit about your volunteerism that you mentioned, and you've already shared that it's been important to you. And Seth and I both have been volunteering for, forever and a day. And we still, in fact, this podcast is volunteer. This podcast is for the THIMA Foundation. It's for our state students to have access to funds for scholarships and things like that. And so this is volunteerism for Seth and I, but we both volunteer at, what we have in the past and still volunteer at the local, the state, and the national level in different capacities. Currently, I'm wrapping up this, just wrapped up the nominating committee chair for AHIMA. And I have loved that opportunity. And I feel like I've accidentally fell into some of the volunteer roles that I had. I didn't have a clear path to, okay, I'm going to do this, and then it's going to qualify me to do this role, and then qualify me for this volunteer role. So I don't really think we do a good job as health information professionals at saying, here's a trajectory of volunteerism that kind of helps you start at that foundational level, and then you could advance through. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about several of your, or any or all of your volunteer experiences at your state or national level with the HEMA specifically, or with health information specifically, and give some advice maybe on how do we well, let's save the advice, because there's a lot of things you want to tell us about volunteering. You've done a lot for our profession and for the organization of AHIMA. So I'm just going to stop and let you just share anything about volunteerism in your experience.
First of all, congratulations to you being the chair of the nominating committee. I know that's a huge role and very important role, trying to find individuals who are interested and qualified to serve at the national level. That is not easy work, but very necessary and important work. So, volunteerism, and I will say to anyone that's listening, my first volunteer role, my director said, you need to go on the ballot as the local treasurer. And I'm like, well, no one knows me. They're not, I'm not going to win, right? No one knows me. And she quickly reframed all of that and said, it's not about winning. It's about people getting to know who you are and what you bring to the table. And I went, wow, okay. And so from that advice, very first volunteer role, I did go on the ballot. I happened to win. I have no idea how, but I did. But I won. And but that wasn't what was important. What was important is what I could bring to the table and getting your name out there in front of individuals. And so from a volunteer role, I did start locally, but there are so many opportunities now at the state and even at the national level. Just there's a need. There's not a straight path. Just wherever you see there's a need. And what happened with me is it allowed me to grow my own skills. When you talk about leadership, it's really about influence. It's not, necessarily telling people what to do, but, you have a problem, you have individuals that are all wanting to improve things. And so that's how you grow and you learn those leadership skills and you get to practice. And I say practice, air quotes here, in that you have an opportunity because you're not in charge of anyone, right? You're not the boss, okay? You are in a volunteer role just like everybody else. And how do you bring people together to get things done, to accomplish a goal? And so when you think about leadership, those skills is really about how do you influence individual to come together and solve a problem. So on the state level, I think my first state board position was director, and I was there when I ran, I won, and then I was director of all the exhibits and all of that. And so, not knowing that's the role I was going to take, I wanted to be the legislative person, but our president at the time said, no, I need you over here. And I'm like, oh boy, what have I gotten myself into? But, it turned out to be one of the best experiences ever. I learned a whole new language behind the scenes, doing all of that work and working with our exhibitors and setting up that whole program. And so that's where it started. And I think I did that role for 2 terms before I transitioned to running for our state president, and then was state president. And as state president, and even as director on the role, on the board, the state board, I also was involved at the national level just because of where I was sitting on the Texas HIMA board. And was a delegate in the House. So you get to meet all these neat people, different backgrounds, different skill sets. And I mean, that is the most fun and the most enriching part of being a volunteer. I mean, you just get access to all these really smart people. Uh, and when you have a problem, my gosh, you got people that you can call from anywhere, right? And so that's the most fun part of being a volunteer. So I would encourage everybody to make that part of your career journey. It would play such a significant part. And sometimes what happened with me, the impact on my career was that when somebody said, oh, we need somebody to do X. And if you're one of those individuals that takes the role and is successful in the role because you do the work, I mean, volunteerism is not about being recognized. It's about doing the work, right? And so they'll say, "Oh, let's call Diann, or let's call Shannan," and that's how you get into some of these roles, right? Whatever she touches, like Shannan, whatever she touches, she's going to do a great job. She may not have that particular skill, but she's going to put in the work and she's going to give it her best. And not only that, she's going to leave it better than it was before she got there. And that's really what it's all about. And so you do that in your volunteer role, you will find that you will do that in your career and everything that you do.
I love that. One of the things that I think about is the delegates. Like the House of Delegates was so much fun because you're right. You get to meet people from all walks of life, all over the country. And the House of Delegates itself was a lot of fun and challenging, and prepping for that, and the debates and all those type things. But even the evenings, like some of those conversations around the bar, just solving the world's problems out there with some of the smartest people in the industry. And it's like the conversations, I look back on that and I'm like, those conversations were so much fun, just trying to figure out, all right, how do we solve this?
Yeah, it's so good too, Ryan. I appreciate that you say, that it's work. It's definitely work, and some of the roles seem glamorous, but almost certainly, the more glamorous a role might seem to you, the harder the work is for that particular role. Like, imagine as president of AHIMA, past president of AHIMA, being voted on by the AHIMA membership to represent us on that national stage. That's a glamorous position in some people's eyes. But in the reality of what happens, that is a very challenging role. You have to, you're essentially the leader of the board that is the boss of the CEO, and you're making sure that you're on a right trajectory as an organization. And then you also have to balance governance between the board and the House of Delegates. Talk a little bit about maybe the different levels of volunteerism and then the amount of work. And I guess my point is, admittedly, it is hard work, but if you prepare for it, it's so worth it. Talk a little bit about that if you can.
Absolutely. I would caution anyone to get into a volunteer role because they think it's glamorous, because it's not, as you indicated. So, just even starting with some of the work groups, okay, in the House of Delegates, starting there is a great place, because what you learn is really how to do environmental scanning and what's going on in the industry, and not just the HIM industry, but from a broader scale, healthcare, right? And then it teaches you to also, at least it taught me, to look outside of healthcare for solutions for some of the things that are happening in healthcare, right? Because some other industries like business or banking, when you think about the EHR, when you think about banking, well, that's the financial electronic health record, and they have gotten it down to science. They have figured out, they have interoperability. And so it trains your mind to think broader, right? So being on some of those work groups and showing up and being prepared, read your reports. If your role is environmental scanning, by God, go out and do some environmental scanning. And that is not just talking about your small circle of friends or the people you know, right? Talk to someone in another state. But that's what you do. Ask people, right? And so when you come to the meeting, you're actually prepared. If there are reports that need to be read the reports before you get there. Okay. And then I would just kind of highlight or put in, electronically, because I'd be working with PDFs. I would just put my question directly on the PDF. So I would bring it up during the meeting and say, okay, this is what I had a question about. Can you clarify that? Right. And so that's part of that work. But, and then being a board of director, wow. Yes, that's work. However, again, read your reports, be engaged, ask questions. And if there's a particular board committee that you're not comfortable with, like most people, is the finance, right? By God, get on the finance committee, ask questions. Don't be afraid of it, because I tell you what, whenever I would get board reports, I would do the finance part first. Because if I didn't have time to do anything else, I had to do the finance part first. And then what I found is the financial statements or whatever kind of directed how I looked at the rest of the board reports. Okay. Because that to me was the kind of the key to everything. I mean, yes, you're doing all these programs and all of that, right? But what is the financial component telling you? And you really have to ask hard questions. You have to ask hard questions. And there's nothing wrong. It shouldn't be anything wrong with that, because that's your role. You have a fiduciary role. And then you also have a responsibility to the membership. You have and so don't get on the board with your own agenda. You got to look at the collective, right? You have to look at the collective. You have to listen to the rest of the other board members, and you have to ask the hard questions. That is your role. And so being the president was tough. And I said it was tough because, first of all, I already had a full-time job. I had a full-time job as vice president. And then when I became board president, I had another full-time job.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's and when I look back, sometimes I wonder, how in the heck did I do that? But I was fully engaged. And what I did for me to protect myself, first of all, when Shannan was reading my bio, I'm not just involved in HIM type volunteer roles, but things that are in my community that are important to me. And even that helped broaden my skills when I got on the HEMA board, because I already kind of knew how boards work, not just the HIMA boards, right? And so I had a different frame of reference. I had seen how things operated on the business side boards, right? That were not, they were nonprofits, but I was able to bring that experience in and ask a different type of question because I had seen something different. And so I would say get involved in at least one community board where you can, broaden your skill set and your view of how it should be. Okay. What the possibilities are. And so to protect I said protect myself. It wasn't really protecting myself, but to help me manage me sometimes, because when I'm either in or I'm out. I'm just that person. Once I've committed to something, by God, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. I'm going to keep my word. So what I did do, I had an assistant at the time that anything new that came in, request for speaking or whatever, before I would say yes, I had to go through her. And she would say, remind me, Diann, no, you don't have time for that right now. And then on my personal side of the house, I had my husband, and I would say, oh, I really want to do that, because he said, Diann, you don't have time to do that. You're right, I don't. So the answer is no. But what I would do is always connect that individual with someone else that could help them. So your network that you grow in your career or personal life, you can always still help, but give them another name. And then it allows that person's an opportunity to grow their skill sets also. So I'm a connector.
That's great.
In some sense, right?
Well, that you are, yeah, and you're an inspiration, as Shannan mentioned. We were I think you were on the board the last time I was in the house, and that's when I got to work with you. And just an absolute wonderful, inspiring leader, and I appreciate that. And I would ask, I know you like exercise, and I've driven by many gyms, and I'd be curious what advice you would give to students or young professionals that are sitting there going, "How do I manage 3 or 4 full-time jobs when 3 or 4 of them are volunteer positions?"
Right. What I would say, first of all, I do like exercise. Um, and the reason I do, it's my thing of how I always managed my stress level. Everybody has to find their thing, and it had to be physical for me. In fact, when we had COVID and everything shut down because I was an Orange Theory person, and that's pure craziness. But even with Orange Theory, it's not craziness. With Orange Theory, I had the national membership, so when I would travel to other cities, I would make sure I would visit one of their studios, and I would take a picture with the coach and I would post it. And I usually even went to an Orange Theory class with one of the board members. We went like at 6 a.m. in the morning. And I knew Danica. I know you know Danica, Brenda. Yeah, she and we met up in Chicago, and we had board meetings, and that was the only time we could go was early in the morning. And so we did. And so it's just, that's my thing. And so one of the things I did do, I was telling Seth earlier, I actually bought a Peloton during the pandemic. And so that started being my thing. Yeah, and I've done a half marathon, did that one time, never do it again. once was enough. Uh, So, but you have to find your thing, because that was the one thing that I could do anywhere, anytime. And I would exercise early in the morning because that was the only time that was guaranteed that nothing would show up on my calendar. So I would do it before I go to work. And I tell you, it clears my head, gives me energy. And even in retirement, I am still working out, doing something every day. And I like to start my day with it because it just changes your whole perspective on problem solving. It's just energizing to me. So as a leader, take the time for yourself, even if it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And no, I don't want to get up and do that every day, but I am disciplined, and I tell myself in my head, get up, girl, just get up and do it. Just get up and do it. I never, never, ever regret doing it. I always regret not doing it. So you have got to just have the discipline. Some days are better than others, but on those days when it's like, take the 15 minutes. That's all you need to do. 15, 20 minutes. But once you get started, sometimes you find, okay, it's been 30 minutes. That was not my goal, right? So just do it and find your thing to help. It'll make your life better, and it will make life better for the people that you are interacting with all day long.
Yeah. So starting with self-care, right? Volunteerism.
Absolutely.
Make sure to put your mental and physical health as part of really, and it can sound self-serving when you say it this way, right? But it's not self-serving. It is definitely, but it's also serving your family and your community and everywhere you volunteer. If you're taking care of yourself mentally and physically, you're better for everybody in every community that you're part of, right?
Right, including yourself. So I always say self-care, work-life balance. I used to not be a believer in work-life balance because I call them the spinning plates. And I always said I had a platter. My platter was full, overflowing. You do overeat at Thanksgiving, right? You'd have a platter. So that was always my thing. But I finally figured it out. And part of that really is the whole self-care piece of it. And it doesn't take a lot. If it's meditation, because some days that's what I need to do. I may start with, okay, I need to calm myself down. Let me take 5 minutes. If that's not enough, I'll take another 5. But by 15 minutes later, you're good. And so you can think more clearly. And Shannan, one of the things that I did one year as a, every year I would just, have goals that I'm going to set for career goals with my boss every year. And one year I had one goal, and that one goal was self-care. When I met with my boss and he said, "What is this?" I said, "You know what?" I said, "I have figured out if I can't take care of me, I'm no good for nobody else." And he thought, you're right. You're absolutely right. I did not have any goals about how I was going to continue to improve the department. All of that came off the plate. And it came
Wow.
after a significant health event personally. And I will say to the audience, I am a 15-year breast cancer survivor. And it took breast cancer for me to reframe my mind about the whole work-life balance and self-care. So guys, don't wait until you have a significant event such as that. It is possible, but you have to think differently. So do that for yourself. And for those professionals that are out there that I grew up in a very small town in Texas. There are probably 310 people, not very big. And I was the first in my family to actually go to college. Moved to Fort Worth from this little country town that had uh, a country store, and that was the only thing there. And moved to Fort Worth to go to school and get my associate's degree. And just it continued on from there, of course. Ended up Texas Women's, and then I got my master's degree. But what I will say, I started in a small hospital. But I ended up as a vice president. I started as the secretary in an HIM department, a department secretary.
Wow.
Okay. So there's anything is possible. Hard work, dedication, discipline, getting the results, bringing people along on the journey with you, being a compassionate leader. And you may not even want to be a leader, but if there is something that you want to do, go after it. Okay. And that same boss that I had that self-care goal with, once I had been promoted to vice president, and he had another position at the corporate office by then, we continued to connect, and he was a sponsor and a mentor for me because I also figured out I didn't just need a mentor, I needed a sponsor. Within the organization, someone that can speak your name in the room when you're not in the room, but you still got to do the work. Okay. You got to do the work. And so he became a sponsor for me. And what was so beautiful about that relationship is that he once told me that he was very proud of me, that I had become an executive within the company. And that had to do with, one, I came from a small town. So that was strike one against me of being at the level that I was at. Two, I was female. Okay. And I was like, okay, where are we going with this, right? And then the third was that I was a Black female. He said, you had 3 strikes against you. I was like, really? And he goes, yes. And I was like, he was right, but I never thought about it that way. But anything is possible, and not just possible, you have to do the work. And yeah, so, I just want to encourage your audience that just because you're at a particular role now, whatever role you're in, you do your best, you knock it out of the ballpark. And, you've got to prepare yourself. You have to get the education. You have to learn things. And if your organization is offering, training of any sort, be interested in that. You have to take charge of your career yourself.
Yes. I love it. I love it, Diann. And thank you for sharing, especially some of the personal stories shared there at the end. I got a little bit of a longer story in when I ran into you in Salt Lake, and I loved that part of the story. I'm going to read the rest of your bio now. So Diann is a breast cancer survivor and was a 2015 ambassador for the American Cancer Society in North Texas. She raised funds for and still raises funds for cancer research with her team, Hope is Dope, one of the top fundraising teams for the American Cancer Making Studies Strides Against Breast Cancer walk in North Texas. Through her survivorship program, she supports women on their breast cancer journey by engaging the Hope is Dope support group. She enjoys traveling, gardening, volunteering, and spending time with family and friends. And my point, the reason that I wanted to save that till the end, is because it does not matter the community that you find yourself in. So whether it's your professional community, your, where you live, your family, your personal community, whatever community or communities that you're involved in, it takes work to make those better. But it is always worth it to do the work to make them better. Always worth it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. Very inspiring. Diann, thank you for joining HIPcast. We're just tickled to have you as a guest, and it was such a fun conversation. We could probably go for another 10 hours, but we want to thank you for being here with us and sharing your story. You're truly an inspiring leader, and we appreciate everything you've done for the HI industry.
Well, thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Shannan, until next time, my friend.
All right. See ya.